Welcome to Candlewick Library. I'm Cheryl. Today I'm continuing my videos on adaptations. Today I am talking about the adaptations that I hate or really disappointed me. Again, I was going for 10 and I ended up with 12, but I know I'm missing some. I know that there's some that I was forgetting. So maybe I'll think of them while I'm filming, maybe I won't. The first one I'm going to talk about is one that I don't hate it, but I was very disappointed with it, but I still watch it and I still enjoy it now that I've gotten over the initial disappointment, and that is
Harry Potter. Harry Potter?
Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I love the Harry Potter books, as everyone who watches me knows. I really enjoy the Harry Potter movies, but The Prisoner of Azkaban was, when it came out, that was still my very favorite book. It still is tied with The Deathly Hallows for my favorite book in the series. And I had so many expectations for that movie. With the whole I don't want to spoil it on here if there's anyone who hasn't read Harry Potter that still is going to, but there's the whole Marauder storyline. There's so many interesting things in that book, and they left all of it out. I am sure that I drive my husband and anyone who watches anything with me crazy when it's something that is missing things that should be there from the book. But I know that that's probably the one that I was elbowing in the most. Like, that's different. That's different. Why did they put that in here? I hated the shrunken head in the bus. I don't know why they added that. And I heard later that J.K. Rowling liked that, but I don't know why. I just thought it was weird. But I didn't like it. And I was so disappointed that they left out so much of the Marauder storyline. And I don't feel like you get the whole picture of what that book was if you watch that movie. So I'm hoping with the news that they're remaking Harry Potter into a TV series, I hope that they will rectify it with that book. Number 2 is another one that I didn't hate, but I was very disappointed and I've never watched it again. And that is that there was an adaptation of Emily of New Moon by Lucy Maud Montgomery. And I just felt like they made it really dark and kind of supernatural and left out the whimsy. And I know that the Emily series is considered to be a little bit, be more dark. Compared to Anne, it is. But I still feel like it's not a dark, to me personally, I don't feel like it's a dark story. And so when I felt like I was watching something that was kind of creepy while I was watching it, it didn't do it for me. So I would say Emily of New Moon, that was a miss. Number 3 is one that are not actually books that I love, but I enjoyed the Percy Jackson series when I first read it. And when I saw the first grouping of movies that they made about it, I was very surprised at how much they changed. I didn't hate it, so maybe it doesn't belong on this list with some of the other ones, but I didn't think it was a good adaptation when compared to the book. Number 4 is also a book that I don't even have anymore, and I don't think I would like it anymore. But I really enjoyed it the first time I read it, and that was Beautiful Creatures. If you know the Beautiful Creatures story, it's a lot of magic, but kind of dark magic, which is why I don't think I would like it again if I read it. But I remember when I watched the movie for that, I felt like they took what I thought was the heart of the story out. I felt like it was poorly acted. I felt like it was poorly executed. I just didn't feel like that they captured the book. But again, I probably wouldn't like either one if I read them now. Number 5 would be the new Poirot Halloween Party. It's the new Kenneth Branagh adaptations of the Hercule Poirot stories. And I really enjoy Agatha Christie. Halloween Party wasn't one of my favorite ones, but I thought it was entertaining when I read it. But when we watched the new adaptation of that, I was shocked. It wasn't the same story at all. Like, it was completely different. They took it to Venice for some reason. It was supernatural and scary. I couldn't say I hated the movie, but I didn't understand what they did with it. Number 6 is kind of an iffy one. It's Dracula. And of course, I really enjoy the book Dracula, and I have yet to see a good adaptation of it. I've watched quite a few adaptations now, and I don't feel like they ever do the book justice. So that isn't one movie in particular. I just feel like every single time I've watched any Dracula adaptation, I've been disappointed. Number 7 is Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library. I really loved this book. We read it for book club quite a few years ago, and then I read it with my daughters. And it's just such a fun, lighthearted book, but it's so much fun for just having the kids in there and trying to figure out the puzzles, and it's all about books. And I just had a really good time with that book, with my book club, and with my children. And so when I heard that, I think it was Nickelodeon that did the adaptation, and I thought it was going to be such a great movie. It would have been a really easy movie, I think, to adapt. And I heard that the author was involved in that one. And so I thought, for sure, this is going to be the adaptation that's going to be great. And then I watched it, and I thought it was stupid. I felt like that they completely changed things they didn't need to change. It felt Nickelodeonized, if that's a word. It just felt like it was really dumbed down, and they took the fun silliness and just made it ridiculous. So that was one that I really did hate. Number 8 is the third Anne of Green Gables movie and the prequel. So the reason this disappointed me so much is it's made by Sullivan, made by the same people that made Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avonlea, that are some of my favorite movies. By itself, I actually would really like the third movie. I think it's called Anne the Continuing Story. And I did own it for a while because I was so torn on it, where I loved seeing them older. I loved having more story. I didn't feel like the story was completely terrible. My problem with it is that it went off book so much. I don't know why they did it the way they did it, because Sullivan also created Road to Avonlea. And in Road to Avonlea, Gilbert comes to Marilla's funeral and says Anne couldn't come because she's home with the kids because they're sick. And that would be more accurate to the books. But in the third movie, even though they had already filmed that, they'd already filmed Road to Avonlea, all of a sudden, Marilla is dead already, Green Gables is in shambles, and Anne and Gilbert aren't even married yet. And then they adopt the war baby. I'm spoiling this if you haven't seen it. And of course, that doesn't happen in the books either. I think that Sullivan should have made Rilla of Ingleside. They could have had Anne and Gilbert older in it still. They could have even made them more of the story if they'd wanted to, but they could have had it centered around Rilla getting the war baby, and they could have had Jem and Walter, their sons, going to war. That would have made an amazing movie. And they still would have had the war element and then the orphan baby element. But for some reason, they decided to fit it into Anne and Gilbert, that all these years later, they're not married still. It was so off book. And it just didn't make any sense. If somebody else had made it, then that might have made sense. Or if they hadn't made Road to Avonlea, it might have made sense. But the fact that they were like, well, let's just forget that we have already done all of this other stuff and let's just do a new story, it didn't make sense to me. And then the prequel, I started to watch. I didn't finish it because it completely messed up Anne's family's backstory. Obviously, whenever it is Anne of Green Gables related, I'm going to get kind of passionate. Like I said, I didn't finish the prequel, never watched it again. The continuing story, I just finally a couple of years ago said, you know what, I'm not going to watch this again. It frustrates me when I watch it, so I'm not going to watch that anymore. Now, the last 4 are going to be the ones I'm the most passionate about, if you can believe it, after the last one that I just talked about. First is The Lost World by Michael Crichton. I love Jurassic Park. It is one of my favorite movies, and I actually like the whole series of movies they've made, even the newer ones. I feel like they did a really good job with the first movie. I'm going to talk about that in another video. And I feel like the third one and all of the newer ones I like because there weren't books for them to go off of. So they were very free to just stay in that world and create whatever they wanted to. But Lost World has a book. I don't hate the movie so much that I will never watch it, but it does annoy me, and I don't watch it as often as I do the other ones. There were so many things in that book that were so cool. And because of knowing what they were able to do in the other Jurassic Park movies, I know that they could have done it in the movie. But they chose not to. I mean, there were glow-in-the-dark raptors in The Lost World. Why were there not glow-in-the-dark raptors in the movie? I don't know. They changed so much in that movie. And I think my expectations were really high because of how well they did Jurassic Park. Next, I'm going to go with another Anne-themed adaptation, and that is Anne with an E on Netflix. That started out strong for me. I don't remember his name right now, but the guy that played Matthew is the man that played Jasper Dale in Road to Avonlea. And I thought he was a decent Matthew. The woman that played Marilla, I thought she did an excellent job. That was probably the best thing I had to say about the show, is her, at least the episodes I watched, her depiction of Marilla was really well done. I thought that the girl that played Anne was fine. There were a couple of times it made me laugh out loud at parts that maybe I wouldn't have put in, but I thought that was kind of funny. But they added so many things into that show that I am certain Lucy Montgomery would have hit them over the head with the book if she'd been anywhere near them when she saw it. And so as it got further along, the more and more stuff they were putting in it that should never have been there. And I feel like if they wanted to put modern things in it, they should have made it a modern adaptation. So at least you know what you're getting. And I've heard a lot of people that say that they love Anne of Green Gables, and then when you ask if they've read the book, they haven't, but they've watched Anne with an E. And like, you don't know Anne of Green Gables if that's the only thing you've watched. I'm kind of snobby, I guess, when it comes to Anne of Green Gables. I was very angry by the time I decided to turn it off. What they did with Aunt Josephine, what they did with Matthew even. And I don't want to spoil that on here, but if you have questions, I can answer them. I hated it. I hate it so bad. Next one is Timeline by Michael Crichton. So another Michael Crichton book. Timeline, as I've said before on here, that is probably my favorite Michael Crichton book. If not, it's tied with Jurassic Park. It's quantum physics with time travel and medieval times. And I thought this was going to be such a good movie. And in fact, Gerard Butler plays my favorite character. This was going to be such a good movie. And I went with my husband. I think we were dating or we were just first married. And at one point he leaned over to me and whispered, if this happens, then this is the stupidest movie ever. And I knew that was going to happen. But in the book, it wasn't cheesy. But in the movie, they made it cheesy. But I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, I really hated that adaptation. I felt like they had everything going for them and they screwed it up. My final adaptation for this video is the one that I think is probably one of the worst adaptations I've ever seen in my life of any book ever. And that is Aragon by Christopher Paolini. I really enjoy that book series. And I did recently read it. Last year I reread them and they were more violent than I remembered them being. But I still really enjoyed the series. I was really excited about that movie. And I actually stayed excited for probably the first 5 to 10 minutes of it. I think that the casting was really well done. And it started out really strong, and then it just spiraled. And I don't know where they were getting the storyline for the movie that they made. If anyone ever says, what are the worst movie adaptations ever, I doubt you'll ever find a list that doesn't have Aragon on it. I don't know if there was anyone that liked it. So if you're watching this and you did like that adaptation and you've read the books, let me know, because I would love to know what you loved about it. But I just felt like they completely destroyed the whole book. I feel like they completely destroyed the whole story. So that would be my worst on my list. Hardly ever made a video this negative before. Let me know if any of these would be on your list as well, or if you, again, think I'm crazy and these are some of the movies that you've loved. And let me know what you think are the worst adaptations, movies that you have watched of books that you liked or loved and you hated the adaptation. Let me know those below.